A verdict of obedience of the Sharia court on a disobedient Muslim wife. This is a love story that was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. All characters in this book are fictional, and any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This story is about 3 Muslim girls who were subjected to gross injustice, severe violence, and abhorrent persecution by Muslim men, religious leaders, Sharia court judges, and police officers in the Islamic community and the religion of Islam and its misogynistic, hateful, and abusive teachings against women's rights, which are innumerable. For example, beating of women, polygamy, child marriage, circumcision of the private parts of small Muslim girls, which is known as female genital mutilation or FGM, slaying them in honor killings, inequality between males and females in inheritance, testimony in court, marriage, divorce, men's guardianship over women, controlling their lives and destinies as if they are minors, physically handicapped or mentally retarded, and forcing them to wear the hijab, niqab, or the humiliating burqa, which makes them appear as if they are scary ghosts. Muslim men are allowed by the Quran to have sex or rather rape without the need for marriage captive women of war such as wives, daughters, sisters, and even mothers of the defeated enemies who are called unclean infidels such as Jews, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, atheists, etc. Islam forbids a Muslim woman to become a president of a country or a boss at work or a judge in court, and she is strictly forbidden to lead men or women in prayer as an imama. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad said the woman is an unclean creature just like a dog and a donkey, and therefore as a defiled being she annuls the man's prayer if she passes in front of him while he is praying. The Quran likens the woman to the human feces which spoils the man's ablution or religious cleansing. Many Islamic countries prevent women from going to school and work, and they are not permitted to drive cars, bicycles, or motorbikes. And none of them is allowed to leave the house without her husband or with the muharram man the woman is forbidden to marry, such as her father or brother. They are forbidden to practice any kind of sports, such as soccer, basketball, volleyball, and tennis, and they are not allowed to go to gymnastics, beaches, or swimming pools, cinemas, or theaters, or act as heroines in movies or actors in the stage in plays, or be female singers, or compete in beauty contests such Miss World or Miss Universe. They are not permitted to be reciters of the verses of their holy Quran because the Prophet Muhammad said the woman is a wara or naked and her voice is a wara too. He also said the woman comes in the form of Satan and retreats in the shape of the devil. Muslim women are also not allowed to fall in love with Muslim men before marriage or choose their future husbands or life partners. This story is about the 3 innocent Muslim girls, Intisar, Firdaus, and Mona. Chapter 66. Visiting the detained son in Kassala prison. When the leader of the spies arrived in the city of Al-Ghadarif and informed the so-called legitimate husband of the alleged runaway Muslim wife Intisar about his opinion about the madness of her lover, Al-Wulhan Sami, he was expelled and lost his job immediately. However, Mr. Tia Koko Wad Al-Shaitan challenged Hassan Majub Al-Halali and refused to accept his decision to dismiss him. He told him that he worked for Mustafa Osman Al-Taib. Hassan told him, after Mustafa was arrested with the leader of the second gang, Abu Shakur Awad al-Kalb, the son of the ugly prostitute Kaltumia, and his 3 spies who were arrested in Kassala prison, he was officially appointed in charge of the search team by the big man. Now the important question becomes, who is the big man? Tia thinks that he was hired by the rich old man's son, and therefore Mustafa is the big man for him. Hassan argued that he was delegated by Mustafa's father, and for him the father is the big man. This issue resulted in major disagreements and heated arguments. Everyone has put his feet on the ground, and no one is ready to move a single foot back based on his firm decision. Finally, Chief Tia told the alleged husband, Hassan, "You can go to the old, convicted father in Khobar prison in Khartoum City, and as for me and my 2 men, we will go to the son who is under investigation in Kassala prison." However, no such proposal was approved by the 2 criminals. The 2 ugly spies, Rat and Eagle or Jaeger and Neser, asked their ringleader Tia to agree to a compromise. Mr. Fada, the man of wonders and the secretary of Mr. Majub al-Hilali, came up with a good solution. He said that the problem must be presented first to the son, Mustafa, in Kassala prison, and if he does not solve it or provide good advice, then it must be referred to his father, Mr. Osman al-Tayyib, who is in Khobar prison in Khartoum. Without another alternative, the 2 disputing leaders agreed to travel the next day to the city of Kassala and visit the eldest son of the despicable old man, who is also the brother of the groom, Sammy. The visitation time has been set to 4 p.m. On the same special day that the 2 intimate lovers, Intisar and Sammy, were married in a holy Christian marriage, the 3 spies met the so-called legal Muslim husband of the disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, and the secretary, Fada, the man of wonders, at the Kassala bus station. Then they took 2 taxis to the prison. The 2 feuding leaders, Tia and Hassan, still harbor a deep grudge and hatred for each other in their hearts, and thus refuse to travel on the same bus from Gadaref to Kassala. At the entrance to the prison, they filled out visitor forms and waited for the exact time of 4 p.m. During the waiting period, the 2 groups sat separately. Hassan and Fada sat under the shade of a large tree, and Mr. Tia and his 2 spies occupied the shade of another tall tree. When the visitation time began, an angry warden came out of the prison gate and started loudly shouting the names of the first visitors. On each visit, 10 visitors will be allowed to visit their relatives, friends, former jail inmates, or criminal friends. There are more than 200 visitors that day. Every 10 visitors will be given 10 minutes. The 2 opposing sides were called up with the other 5 visitors after 6 sets had finished. They are informed in advance that their allotted 10 minutes run between 5:05 and 5:15 p.m. 1 extra minute will not be allowed after 5:15 p.m. They have to deliver their message during that time period only. Mr. Tia, who is used to this kind of prison visit, told Hassan to speak quickly and very loudly first, otherwise they would wait another week for Mustafa's next visit. The prison authority will not allow the same visitor to visit the same inmate more than once a week. Satan's eldest son Tia, of course, speaks from long experience because he has visited many times or has been visited by fellow gangsters. Hassan understood that 10 minutes is a short time to get his message across, so he had to speak as fast as he could. However, he asked Tia why he should speak so loudly. This unnecessary and absurd shouting may enrage an already angry warden and lead to him being beaten or thrown behind bars. Again, through experience, Mr. Tia tells him that the place where they will meet Mustafa is a very small room. It is not enough for 5 people to stand together and talk to the prisoners. The 10 of them would stand shoulder to shoulder and shout loudly at their prisoners. The prisoners will also line up in the same way on the other side. The distance between the visitors and the prisoners is as wide as a large road of 4 lanes. There will be nets and iron bars separating the prisoners from their visitors. Because of the nets, the visitors will not see the prisoners, nor will the prisoners see their visitors. Worst of all, there would be no lights inside that tomb-like dark room. So, from both sides, visitors and prisoners have to shout out loud their names first to get to know each other, and then exchange greetings and convey their messages as quickly as possible. That's why 20 people will scream at the same time. The great spy, Tia, also advised the so-called husband Hassan with another wisdom that 1 person from each group should speak and the remaining 3 people should stand behind them without saying a single word. This way, only 7 people will stand up and shout. For this purpose, Tia and Hassan are chosen because they are the 2 main conflicting leaders. All the above valuable information and wise instructions Hassan received from Tia while the 2 leaders were still standing near the small room. Suddenly the door to the small visitors' room opened. The jailers appeared with their large clubs, dragging the 10 previous visitors and forcing them out of the little room. When the 10 previous visitors had been kicked out of the small room, the door slammed shut. The 10 new visitors were then told to be ready because the door would reopen in a few seconds. The 10 visitors await the reopening of the door as if they are about to run a competitive race in the Olympics. They are standing and flexing their backs as if they were in the 100-meter race at the recent Olympic Games in Tokyo, Japan. Everyone wants to go in first and talk first. There is a technical problem that every visitor must face. He must be able to locate his prison inmate as quickly as possible by sound. Because of the dark room, the visitor and the detainee must use the sonic bat method to locate each other. Then the visitor and the convict or suspect should move quickly and face each other for better and faster communication. Again, if they both try to move at the same time, they may find themselves just switching positions and standing back up in the wrong places. And if they were foolish enough and made a second attempt to right their wrongs, the 10 minutes would be up. In this case, the visitor would be expelled by the guards without speaking a word to his imprisoned relative, friend, or fellow gang member. But this would be more likely tolerable than if some visitors decided to shout at their prisoners from wherever they were standing. In this case, they will have to shout at the top of their voices across the small room. That is why the clever criminal Mr. Tia Coco Wad al-Shaitan advised the firstborn son of Satan Hassan to speak quickly and loudly. By the way, the big spy Tia is a criminal and the son of a notorious criminal. His biological father is Coco Wad al-Shaitan and the dreadful devil Lucifer, who is currently serving a life sentence in Gaddarif Central Prison. He is also the current leader of the bodyguards in the same prison. He was the one we met in the prison earlier in the barracks haunted by demons number 13. Moreover, he was the one who applied vigilante justice and ripped the ears of the charlatan and rapist of the first innocent girl Mona, the great witch Dr. Hajj Muhammad, and made the evil old man Osman al-Taib a lame for life, and he who bound, starved, beat, and raped to death the second innocent girl, the late underage girl Firdos. At 5:07 p.m., the door of the visitor's room was suddenly opened from the inside. This means that the allotted 10 minutes have just begun, and the countdown has also begun. The 10 new visitors at the speed of light ran toward the door. One of Tia's spies fell on the way by a huge visitor. He is Jaeger and is also known in the gang of spies as the Rat or the Big Mouse. He fell flat on his stomach and nose and was severely injured. The attacker didn't stop to apologize to Jaeger or try to help the person she'd brought down. She is a fat woman, but she has a man's body. No one else has ever stopped or cared about the Big Mouse, Mr. Geiger. Even the jailers did not stop and were not disturbed by the fallen visitor. All 9 other visitors arrived at the door at the same time. Here they ran into another serious problem for each of them. The small door of the narrow room only allowed one person to enter. So, only one visitor among the 9 could successfully pass through the narrow wicket gate. 3 minutes were wasted pulling, shoving, and pushing each other. Somehow by hook or by crook, the 9 visitors managed to get themselves 2 at a time through the small door. Once the visitors entered the small room, they were surprised to find that there were no lights. The great spy, Mr. Tia, forgot to mention this problem to the alleged husband Hassan. Therefore, there is no way of trying to identify which suspect or convict each visitor came to see. This is why the visitors applied the bat method to locate their prisoners. So, everyone started shouting as if he was a bat or Abu al-Raki at the top of his or her voice in the name of the prison inmate who came to visit him. Unfortunately, all the visitors and prisoners discovered that they were standing in the wrong positions. Due to Tia's wise advice, there are only 7 visitors standing side by side in a row. Nisar stands behind Tia while Jaeger is still lying unconscious outside, and Mr. Fada stands behind Hassan. But this also did not reduce the loud scream. Among the 7 visitors, unfortunately, there are 3 females who are screaming in loud voices. The eldest of these 3 women is the female who overthrew the spy Jaeger, expelling him from the cutthroat competition. Of the 4 men, Hassan and Tia stand together. Unfortunately, they discovered that they were standing in the wrong place. Where the detainee Mustafa Osman al-Taib stands, there happens to be a fat woman who speaks loudly. The woman's imprisoned husband, whom she has come to visit, is also on the other end. The detained husband is also a man with a big mouth and a big voice and body. The couple started shouting at each other in louder voices like microphones. The last two women also raised their voices to the limit. They scream like African American rappers. Each woman tries to conquer the other two women. So, in the dark room there is intense competition. The other two visitors also entered the competition but were inferior to the women. Their low voices reached the competition louder than Hassan and Tia's. 2 minutes were wasted when Mustafa was able to realize from Tia's loud voice that his brother Sammy had lost his mind and had gone mad with the love of Intisar al-Habiba, just like the crazy lover Kays who lost his mind when he lost his beautiful lover, Layla. Mustafa tried hard to communicate something, but he couldn't. In this way, the other 2 minutes were wasted. The main problem is that Mustafa, the son of the rich man, is not used to such a method of communication. Hassan also wasted 2 minutes trying to deny Tia's report. Time is over. Immediately, the enraged guards with long clubs in their hands rushed in and began to kick the 9 visitors out of the small, dark room. The super spy Tia and Intisar's alleged lawful husband try to resist, but are beaten and threatened by the jailers and told that they will be thrown behind bars if they don't leave the visitors' room. Then they were forcibly removed from the small room. It is only then that the gang leader Mr. Tia and his second spy, the ugly vulture Kling Abu Saleh, discover that their fellow spy, the scary big rat Jaeger, has been assaulted and half-dead body has fallen into the hot sand in front of the darkened visitor's room as if he is burning in hell. Somehow they revived him and helped him get back on his feet. Chief Tia tried to complain to the guards and sue the huge visiting woman who knocked down and grievously injured his dear friend Mr. Jaeger Samola. The guards dismissed his complaint and told him that they were jailers and that their only duty was to guard the prisoners and not take complaints from visitors, and if he still had any objections he should go to hell or stick his middle finger up his filthy ass and fuck himself. When the two feuding leaders got out of prison, they began to quarrel again about their next move. "We'll have to wait another week to visit him again," Mr. Tia said. "Impossible," Hassan shouts angrily. "We couldn't figure out what Mustafa wanted to tell us. We are not likely to know even if we visited him 10 times. Mustafa was speaking in a soft voice like a spoiled teenage girl. "Excuse me, guys," said Mr. Fadakarer. "This is not the right time to disagree. We gave Mustafa his chance. Now we must go to his imprisoned father, Mr. Osman al-Taib, in Khartoum prison. Moreover, we can take the opportunity to visit the chief adulterer, my ex-boss, Mr. Majub al-Halali." The Grand Spy Tia wants to object to the proposal, but his two thugs Jaeger and Nisar ask him to agree to Hassan and Fada's idea. After that, the 5 men left the prison and went straight to the bus station and booked their tickets to Khartoum City. The flight is scheduled to start at 6 a.m. the next day. Everyone spent the rest of the day in a cheap motel in Kassala City. In the evening, on the advice of Mr. Tia, all 5 men went to a brothel house in the Aldrissa locality of Kassala, drank homemade bitter liquor, committed adultery, and spent most of the night in the company of 2 prostitutes. The 3 spies simultaneously had sex with the same Abyssinian or Ethiopian Christian prostitute called Ababa, and together the alleged legal husband of the disobedient runaway Muslim wife, Intisar, and the man of wonders. The notorious womanizer Fadakarer shared the pussy of the other prostitute, an Eritrean Muslim woman named Fatma. When they got back to their cheap motel in the wee hours of the morning, they were all dead drunk and slept like cavemen. Chapter 67. Visiting the innocent criminal in Khartoum prison. Early the next day, the 5 criminal men rose from their alcoholic stupor like zombies, came out of their graves, and boarded the bus at 6 in the morning and headed for the city of Khartoum. They all feel sleepy. So, most of the 8 hours were spent sleeping, snoring, and disturbing the other passengers. Hassan and Fada occupy 2 chairs and sleep together. Jaeger and Nisar are sitting behind them, and they are both sleeping on each other's shoulders. Only Chief Tia is sitting near a stranger. The stranger is having a hard time with the passenger next to him. Now and then the large passenger's head kept falling asleep on his shoulder. When such an unpleasant situation occurs, the stranger has to shout loudly to his neighbor to get up and remove his big head from his shoulder. Each time the tiny head of the small stranger was pressed hard against the solid iron window of the bus. Whenever he is exposed to such a painful experience, the stranger feels as if he is stuck between two solid, rickety buildings. Sweating, breathing hard, then screaming for his precious life. Afraid of dying in the stampede. Wherefore, Mr. Tia is the only one who didn't enjoy a restful sleep. At 2:15 p.m. the bus reached its final destination. From the bus station, Chief Tia suggested that they have their lunch before going to Khobar Central Prison. Hassan accepted the proposal and invited the group to lunch in a small hut at the bus station at his own expense. In fact, the thief Hassan uses the money of the imprisoned evil old man, but he falsely claims that he is a generous man and spends on the group of spies and thugs from his own pocket and account. While lunch was not yet served, the alleged husband had a clever idea and decided to put it into practice. Then he called one of the restaurant servants and started talking to him. "What's your name, good boy?" Hassan asks. "My name is James," the server replies. "James, do you want to make easy money?" "Yes, sir. But nowadays money does not come easily. We have to sweat and fight for it. If you provide me with 4 good boys like you, I will give each of you a few pennies in cash without doing any work for me." "What kind of work do you want us to do for you?" "I said you wouldn't do any work for me." "Then you must be either a monk or a madman." These are the only 2 types of people who unwisely dispose of their money without expecting anything in return. "James, I'm not one of those fools. I'm just an ordinary person." "In that case, good sir, you must be an alien who landed on another planet or a different galaxy. People on this damned planet Earth never give away their money." "I'm not an alien from space, nor a ghost from hell, nor even a demon or a zombie apocalypse that has risen from his grave. An ordinary person like you. As I did tell you. I just want 4 good citizens like you to accompany us on a visit." "To visit anywhere?" "Khobar Central Prison." Listen, sir, I would rather accompany you to hell, but not to jail. I am not a criminal, and I do not want to associate myself with criminals." "Listen, James, I don't want you to do any criminal thing for me. You will simply stand with us in the visiting room. We're going to visit someone at Khobar Central Prison. At least the person you're going to visit is a criminal. Otherwise, how did he land in the notorious jail Khobar prison? He is an innocent criminal." "How can he be a criminal and innocent at the same time? It is like telling me that Satan was an innocent angel and that God unjustly expelled him from heaven and would finally cast him into the lake of fire." "You talk too much, Mr. James. Are you the son of a church priest?" "I am not the son of a priest. I am a Christian by name, but an apostate Christian. I don't go to church, and I don't read the gospel of Jesus Christ in the Holy Bible, which you Muslims call Injil. Well, James, I'll first try to make myself more clear to you. What I meant to say is that the person we are going to visit in prison is falsely accused by some people of kidnapping, raping, and murdering of his lawful 4th Muslim wife." "Why is he accused of that if he is her husband? You must justify that to me." "Listen, Mr. James, you cannot ask me all these questions as if you are a police interrogator and I am a suspect. If you need easy money, then trust me and bring 4 of your good friends with you and come with us." "Do you want us to be your bodyguards?" "I don't need any bodyguards. I already have 3 spies who guard me too." "Then why do you want us if you have other 3 bad guys with you?" "We want you to form a crowd with us. That's all we need from you." "What kind of crowd?" "We will visit a very dear person. He's in jail. We want to ask him about something particularly important questions. Unfortunately, the small visitors' room will be very noisy when we have 5 other visitors with us. We don't want anyone to be with us while we talk to our imprisoned friend. Your duty is to stand there without saying or doing anything. What will happen after we visit that innocent criminal? You have nothing to do with us after that." "Is that all, sir?" "Yes, James, this will be the end of your mission." Then the newly appointed boy left and returned shortly after with 2 waiters and 2 sweepers. All 4 of the fresh guys looked the same as the Chinese. No one would suspect them if they claimed that they were born to parents as quadruplets on the same day and at the same time. The alleged legitimate Muslim husband, claiming to be the spouse of the disobedient wife, the fugitive, Intisar, from the rule of obedience, stood at his feet and received them warmly. The leader of the gang of spies, Mr. Tia Coco the Devil's son, was astonished to see the 4 newly appointed young men. He concludes that Hassan wants to bypass them by recruiting 5 new spies. So, he got up from his chair, approached Hassan, and shouted angrily, "Have you not yet learned from the mistake of the foolish gang leader Abu Shakura Wad al-Kalb? How can you repeat the same mistake by hiring these stupid servants? Respect yourself and be held accountable, ya Zulhui," "Oh bad man," James shouted angrily. "Have I spoken to you, stupid slave? I'm a server in a restaurant and I'm proud of that. After all, it is better to be a servant in a restaurant than a bodyguard and friend to a criminal imprisoned in the notorious Cooper jail." When James spoke these courageous words, Mr. Tia grabbed his shirt and lifted him off the floor like a small stool. He would have hit his little head against the wall, as if breaking an egg, if not for Hassan, who intervened in time and saved the life of the wise James. "Stop, Mr. Tia," Hassan shouted. "You will kill an innocent restaurant server. This boy is not a spy or a gangster like you. He is just a diligent servant in his service. Please put him down and listen to me." The words of the alleged husband of Intisar calmed the great spy. Then he put James where he was before. The servant felt as if he had been rescued from the mouth of a lion just in time. "I have only asked these 5 gentlemen to accompany us on our visit to Kobar prison." "Why should they accompany us?" "To form a crowd." "What kind of crowd? Are we going to riot or fight?" "Mr. Tia, you know what happened to us in the small, dark visitors' room in Castle prison. In order not to repeat the same problem again, I decided to take these good boys with us. I want them to form a group of 10 visitors with us." "Not a bad idea. But they must leave as soon as their mission is done." "Yes, after that we have nothing to do with them." "Can we know their names?" "My name is James. And this is Peter. And this is John. And this is George. And this is Paula." Mocking the fact that none of you have a good Arabic name, Mr. Tia asks, "We don't like to have Arabic names because we are not Arabs." "Who told you that just a name will make you an Arab? Even if you give me all the treasures of the world, I would not like to be an Arab. Look at this ugly black creature." "Mr. Tia, would you please respect yourself and try to speak to me as a good citizen? You are a black slave and an uncircumcised Christian infidel from the south of Sudan. I am better than you because I do not deny my African origin," James says angrily. "You claim that you are an Arab and that you are an African black man like me." The servant continues bravely. "It is a contradictory claim because no one can be an Arab man and a black African man at the same time. It's like saying I have a black and white girlfriend," James wisely says. "If you don't shut up, I will cut out your tongue." The grand spy Tia Coco shouts angrily when he is unable to match or laugh at the wisdom of the brave servant James. As a matter of fact, Mr. Tia is Sudanese, ethnically from the Nuba Mountains, and claims to be an Arab Muslim, while James and his 4 friends are of African descent from South Sudan. "Please," Mr. Tia intervenes. "Hassan, stop this unnecessary argument." Although Hassan managed to end the intense argument between Tia and James, the two continued to stare at each other like a dog and a cat. All this time, the notorious womanizer Fada Karer had doubts about the 5 servants. Somehow his 6th sexual sense told him that there was a female among them, but he couldn't tell which of them was a girl. "Wait a minute," the Wonder Man shouted. "My 6th sense has revealed to me that something isn't quite right about these 5 guys." "Please, Mr. Fada," Hassan says impatiently, "don't start another unnecessary argument about them. They are all good boys who agreed to help us." James follows Wonder Man. "Are you all boys, or is there a girl in boy clothes among you?" "What a silly question to ask." "Of course, they are males," Hassan says angrily, "and they look and speak like boys." "James, are you going to tell me the truth? Are you all boys?" The Wonder Man insisted on knowing the truth. James angrily says, "We're all boys except for one, but none of us will tell you which one of us is female." "Is Paula him or her? Does she have a dick or a pussy?" Hassan says, "Of course Paula is a man like you and me." "No, let James answer my question," says the sexual predator. James says seriously and angrily that Paula is she-male and also is a sissy and a tomboy. She is a girl who displays traits and behaviors that are typical of a boy. She talks like a boy, smokes like a boy, whistles like a boy, fights like a boy, and sleeps with boys like a man. If you want to verify what I said, Miss Paula can fuck you right now in front of everyone and in broad daylight. I volunteer. The Wonderman says happily, can you fuck me, Miss Paula? Yes, I can say the Wonder Girl, but you have to pay for it. You fuck me and I have to pay you money for it. Yes, of course, this is the rule of the game. Who made that unfair rule? When you have sex with a prostitute, do you pay her or does she pay you? Of course, I have to pay her because she has a pussy and I have a dick. The same rule applies here. I fuck you with my pussy and you have to pay for the cunt you used for your pleasure. Fair and real deal. If you don't want to pay me, then go fuck your mom or fuck your sister, or you can fuck your hand through masturbation. Paula, stop talking about incest and masturbation because I don't like it. I would love to have sex with an adventurous girl like you. Then you have to pay me when you insert your dick in my pussy. Now tell me, Miss Paula, suppose if you had sex with a boy and he refused to pay you. What can you do in such intercourse with you? I am not a stupid or naive person like you. I ask the boy to pay me before I fuck him to death with my camel or cunt in his cock. Well, my dear Paula, I'm willing to pay you in advance, but you have to fuck me till I die. Yes, that's what I can do. If you pay well, I will fuck you to death. When Wonder Man and Wonder Girl spoke these funny last words and struck a fair and practical sex deal between them, everyone cried out with laughter. At the same time, the Wonder Girl Paula fell in love with the sexual predator Fada at first sight. The other four could not recognize Paula by her female name because they were all born Muslims and none of them had ever heard of that name. The four understood that the worshipper of women is a man of wonders, as he claimed to have a sixth sexual sense that helps him discover the female, even if she is the only one among the hundreds of animals and the thousands of male birds. The 10 visitors then boarded a bus and traveled to Khobar Central Prison. Hassan filled out visitor forms and asked his men to register. Only Tia, Fada, and Hassan were able to register their names, while the remaining 7 visitors used their thumbs as fingerprints instead of their signatures. They are all illiterate, unable to read or write. The remaining time was spent under the shade of a large tree. At 4:55 p.m., one of the jailers came out with his list and invited the first 10 visitors to follow him. The first visitors happened to be Hassan and Tia and their 2 groups. The 10 visitors marched in a single column like soldiers in their parade and entered the visitors' room. The visiting room in Khobar prison has better facilities than that in Kassala prison. There are bright lights and enough space. There is a long bench big enough to comfortably accommodate 10 visitors. Even prisoners have benches to sit on. Furthermore, visitors are allowed to spend a maximum of 20 minutes inside the room. When the 10 visitors entered, they found that the condemned convict, Osman Al-Taib, had already sat on the seat across from them, waiting for them. His angry and frightening face appeared to them like the cursed devil. He has lost a lot of weight and meat in a short time, as if he is neither eating nor sleeping. How are you, Uncle Osman? Hassan inquires. I'm fine. But your adulterous political father, who is imprisoned under investigation, is not well, the old man replies. What happened to Mr. Majub al-Halali? Asks the man of wonders. Another angry inmate severely beat him. Fine, but why did this angry criminal beat up my innocent father? Because your father had sex with his adulterous wife. Some rumors circulating among the prisoners in this damned prison say that your adulterous father, Majub al-Halali, raped the beautiful wife, Raja, when her husband, the soldier, Abbas, was not at home. But all the newspapers reported that the soldier's wife willingly committed adultery with my father. Whether you call it adultery or rape, it is a forbidden act in Islam. Your father is now in the intensive care unit and no one knows if he will live or die. So, he, too, becomes another victim of Eve. This is why I believe that a woman is the devil created in human form. Wonder Woman uttered those misogynistic words. Stop this nonsense talk and tell me, guys, why did you come to me? Uncle Osman, we have come to seek your advice and guidance regarding a difficult problem we are facing. Did find your runaway Muslim wife Intisar, or did she get married and run away with my useless son Sammy? I haven't found her yet, and it's not likely that I will. Mr. Tia and his 2 spies have been deceived by your son Sammy. He pretended to be crazy lover like Kay's, and they believed him and stopped following him. How can you do that again? That poor bitch, Intisar, tricked you before and ran away. And now you repeated the same mistake with my evil son. I just wasted my money on hiring useless guys like you. Respected Sir Osman Al-Tayyib says, Tia, seriously, I have been working in this field for 20 years. I make my living from espionage and kidnapping. No one can deceive me in this matter. I regret to tell you that your son has really lost his mind. He has become a banana, a cocoa, a lunatic, a drunkard, an adulterer, a religious fanatic, a terrorist, an apostate Muslim, a Christian infidel, and fit for chains. In clear and unambiguous language, Sami Osman Al-Tayyib became insane and madman. His love story with Intisar ended like the sad story of Kays and Lael. I wish it had successful conclusion like the love tale of Antar and Abla. This is why I don't like to waste your money following a crazy lover. What made you come to this conclusion? I know that my son Sammy is very smart and a university graduate. I don't think such an intelligent and educated son could lose his mind. Good sir, you say that because you have never fallen in love with a woman. I don't blame you because you're an old man now. In the old days when you were young there was no love. Who told you that in the days of my youth there was no love? Did we have hearts of stone? We used to fall in love even stronger, deeper, and more sincere than today's superficial and lustful love. But we did not fall in love with unmarried girls. Islamic law did not allow us to fall in love with our wives until after marriage. But this kind of love does not make a person crazy. It only increases his blood pressure. I'm talking about the love of Romeo, Juliet, Kays, and Layla. Simply put, I am talking about love between a man and a woman before marriage. Now stop lecturing me on love and tell me what made you conclude that my son Sammy had become a mad boy. His antics, sir. Now tell me what you call a person who was once in the brothel and tavern of a liquor seller and an ugly prostitute who looked like a Garantina or hippopotamus drinking liquor as drinking water and committed adultery with the ugliest hooker ever, and the next day he prays at 4 o'clock in the morning in the mosque and sits at the feet of the virtuous imam of God's house. Then he was severely attacked by the devotees, and they threw his half-dead body inside a dirty dumpster. After spending more than an hour inside that dumpster, he emerged like a bruised zombie coming out of his grave and headed straight for the facilitation bus and traveled to Khartoum. From the bus station, he walked for many hours until he reached the Blue Nile River, where he attempted suicide, but was rescued by 2 swimmers. When they brought him out, his clothes were tattered and dirty, and he looked more miserable than a beggar. From the waters of the river, he went to the largest mosque in Khartoum city to pray, but instead entered a Christian church to pray. Only a madman could do all these terrible things, says the old geezer. This is your son, Sammy, sir. He has become worse than the crazy lover Kays. If he had not died by now, he would either be in prison or convert to Christianity and become an apostate infidel. That's why we decided not to waste your money by following such a crazy guy. Well, done, Mr. Tia. However, I want to know what happened to my son after that. As I told you, sir, if he did not kill himself now, he would be in a prison cell or chained inside a cell in a mental hospital. My beloved son Sammy has gone mad because of that poor, dirty whore. Do you mean to say, Uncle Osman, because of my disobedient Muslim wife? Intisar Hassan says angrily. If she was your rebellious Muslim wife, why didn't you grab her and beat her with your stick and fuck her untamed pussy with your dick? What husband in the world would allow his lawful wife to move freely with another man? Even a pimp who sells women to other men or a homosexual who practices sodomy with another man does not consent to this being done to his lawful wife. I will find her and I will certainly punish her with a long whip and fuck her with my big dick. Listen, Tia, I can't believe my son has become a weird lover like Kays. It's just another trick devised by that evil lawyer Scylla. He can fool the entire world, but not me. He cheated on you before and made that bitch run away. My eldest son Mustafa and the foolish spy Abu Shakura and his men were also imprisoned. Even your adulterous father and the rapist, Hajj Muhammad, and I went to prison because of him. And you and Hassan will be thrown into this filthy jail very soon if you are not careful. So don't believe his tricks anymore. I know that my Muslim son Sammy will never enter the Christian church, leave Islam, convert to Christianity, and become an apostate infidel even if he goes mad. I'm sure he's now in the arms of that dirty bitch Intisar and fucking her in her big pussy and dirty ass day and night. So, you must keep looking for her everywhere until you find her. Well, sir, we will resume our search. In what city did you see him enter the Church of the Infidels? In this city, sir. Then you need to start looking for them in the city. Who knows now, maybe the two adulterers had already obtained passports and visas and fled the country and landed in a Western country. Listen, Hassan, I have a friend who works at the passport office. His name is Haydam Wad Al-Qadam, and he is a senior police officer. Go to him and show him your marriage contract and the obedience ruling issued by the Sharia court judge. Tell him that your legal Muslim wife has eloped with another bad man. Let him find out first whether or not she has already obtained a passport. If she is not, then tell him that the wealthy business magnate in the city of Gedaref, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, wants you to put her name on the blacklist. If she comes to get a passport, he should arrest her and then inform you. You know what to do to her when you get your first-hand her. Of course, Uncle Osman, I will do for her what you told me to do. Then go meet him and tell him to blacklist her entire name. But if your friend, the senior police officer, Haydam Wad Al-Qadam, asked me, where is Mr. Osman Al-Taib now? What do I tell him? Tell him he is sick and bedridden in the Soba hospital. Never let him know that I am in this damned prison for notorious criminals and crooks. He knows me as a good citizen. This is a clever idea, Uncle Osman. But don't take these ugly spies with you. As I told you, he knows me as a pious Muslim man. A pious and generous man of prayer, he built the largest mosque in the city of Gedaref. He does not know me that sometimes I become cursed and more dangerous than the accursed Satan himself. Otherwise, if he sees those ugly faces of those criminal thugs of black slaves, of Nuba Mountains, Darfurians, and Southerners with you, he will suspect the whole thing. What about those ugly spies? Do you think we need them anymore? Yes, of course, we need them now more than ever. When the old man renewed his approval of the so-called ugly faces of the black slaves, he began to count their number. Then he smiled excitedly and said 10 is a good number. We need each and every one of you, of course. I will describe what should be your work all at once. Tia and one of his spies must go to Khartoum International Airport and search there for the disobedient runaway wife, Intisar, and her damned man, Sammy. The other two must look for them in all the motels and hotels in town. You and Fadakar should go to all the restaurants in the evening, and in the day you should visit the zoo. The other two must search all the parks, sightseeing attractions, and riverbanks along Nile Street. The remaining two must hang around the cinemas. Today, Wednesday, next Monday, I want you all to meet me at the criminal court in Khartoum Bari and report on the results of the meticulous searches that you have conducted. I will come there for the final hearing of the trial of my late fourth legal wife, Firdos, in which I was falsely accused of kidnapping, raping, and killing her. But excuse me, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, Chief Tia shouted with great anger, these black Africans, the 5 stupid slaves, are not spies. They're just useless southern servants and sweepers. None of them know the meaning of the word spy. It doesn't matter if they know about espionage or not. No one of you was born from the black hairy pussy of his slave mother a spy. You are the leader of the group of spies, and therefore you can train them. But, good Uncle Osman, Hassan says anxiously, these 5 newcomers are not criminals. They're good citizens like you and me. What do you mean by saying that, my son Hassan? If someone helps you find your lawful, disobedient Muslim wife who runs away from you without excuse, does this mean that he is doing a criminal act? But, my uncle, if these 5 Southerners refuse to collaborate with us, what should we do? How do they refuse? So why did they come here? Did they come here to look at me? Am I an ugly monkey like them in a cage at the zoo? Dangerous boss Tia Coco, the leader of the Black Devils, will make sure they have to do the work you've given them whether they like it or not. Can you hear me for a moment, innocent criminal? The wise servant James asks angrily. But before the good citizen James could express his objection, the jailers grabbed his hands and dragged him out of the room with the rest of the visitors. Outside the Khobar prison building, servant James and his 4 southern sweeping friends raise their objections, but are severely reprimanded and corrected by the dangerous criminal boss Tia on the grounds that no one can get in the business of espionage and quit. It is a road of no return. According to that unjust and criminal decision of the imprisoned evil old man, James, John, Peter, George, and Paula are transformed from being innocent restaurant servants into spies and thugs by force. In order to control them and never let them escape, Chief Tia suggested to the alleged husband of Intisar that every new spy should accompany an old spy. The selfish, rejected lover Hassan liked the idea and took the good citizen James with him instead of the notorious womanizer Fada the Wonder Man. The chief of his spies further suggested that if the police officer, Hatem Wad al-Khadim, inquired at the passport office in Khartoum about the ugly slave James, Hassan should tell him that he was his servant. The only thing James needs to be the waiter of the restaurant is to wash his dirty body with Phoenician soap and rough loofahs. He must be bought new, clean clothes, and his torn and dirty uniform must be replaced. Bully spy Tia took sweeper John with him. The other 2 sweepers, Peter and George, and the waitress Paula, were distributed to Nisar, Geiger, and Fada, respectively. The 2 new lovers are the first couple to walk hand in hand and disappear into the crowded streets of the triangular metropolis. Although there is nothing about Wonder Girl Paula that would categorize her as female, Wonder Woman the sex maniac Fada Kara still loves and craves between her legs and her big buttocks and feels that those openings are more than enough for a womanizer and sexual predator like himself. The other 4 groups also headed in 4 different directions in search of the desperately wanted Christian couple in love, namely the disobedient wife, the fugitive from justice, Al-Habiba al-Jamila Intisar, and her handsome mad lover, Al-Habib al-Wulhan, Sammy. Chapter 68. The trial of the gang that raped and killed the second innocent girl. The trial of the gang that kidnapped, beat, imprisoned, starved, raped, and killed the late second innocent girl, Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, the victim of the second brutal rape, took place on Monday morning, corresponding to October 30th, 2017. It was conducted shortly after the happy occasion that the newly married couple Sammy and Intisar experienced on the first night, a wonderful wedding on their real honeymoon. In every trial there will be 2 disputing parties. One will accuse the other. Each party will have an attorney to defend their case. If the suspect's lawyer turns out to be a good lawyer, not necessarily a good person, the charge may fail and the suspect will be acquitted of the crime. From this we can conclude that most trials nowadays are not about whether an accusation is true or false, but rather a battle of words between 2 lawyers. In the trial of those accused of kidnapping, raping, and killing the second innocent girl, the late Firdos, who died at the age of 15, has 2 lawyers. One of them is defending the main suspect, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, and his 2 partners in the crime, the servant, Mr. Haroun, and the nurse, Miss Zakia, and the other lawyer is defending justice and fairness for his late girlfriend, Firdos. Both lawyers graduated from the same University of Khartoum and therefore have equal knowledge of the law of their country. The only difference between them is their practical experience. The suspect's lawyer has practiced petition for 20 years, while the victim's lawyer has absolutely no experience as this is his first case. Very few people showed up on Monday morning for the trial. Although lawyer Salah announced the case in 2 famous and popular newspapers, Al-Sahafa and Al-Ayam, in the 3 cities of the capital of Sudan, namely Khartoum, Bari, and Omdurman, only a few people responded to the invitation. Of the roughly 9 to 10 million people in the Sudanese capital, only 12 people attended the trial. Besides these few, there are 8 spies, the imam of the largest mosque in Gadaref city, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, the notorious womanizer Fada Kara, and the so-called lawful husband of the fugitive Muslim wife Intisar. In addition to this number, there are some close friends of the late victim Firdaus. They are Salah, Mona, Badriya, and Walid Hamza. The 2 lawyers are Salah Ahmed Hassan Salih and another lawyer named Faisal Farouk. This Faisal is a well-known lawyer in the capital city and has defended and won many cases. At 9:30 a.m., the three suspects were brought by the jailers and put in their proper place. Everyone looks at them. Some people have felt sorry for the beautiful young nurse Miss Zakia Karamala. They were also saddened to see such an old man involved in heinous crimes of kidnapping, rape, and murder. None of them sympathize with the servant Haroon because his hideous face reveals his ugly crime to them. Nurse Zakia looked down most of the time. She refused to speak to the two suspects even though they tried to talk to her. The accused, Haroun, looked anxious and afraid. The old man's prison uniform showed that he had already been tried and convicted of another crime. His scary old face shows anger, bitterness, and hatred. He's not smiling or likely to or has done that his whole life. He makes a loud gnashing sound with his false teeth most of the time as if he is eating and chewing raw human flesh like a cannibal. At 9:50 a.m., Judge Sami Hashim and 4 members of the jurymen arrived at the criminal courtroom in Khartoum Bari. Everyone got to their feet, except for the evil old man. The judge reached his judgment seat and sat down with the 4 members of the jury. People also sat and waited for the trial to begin. The courtman came forward and read aloud the names of the 3 suspects. After each name, the audience hears the word present. Then the courtman changed the paper and took some other papers from his file and started reading the charges. Your Honor, Judge Sami Hashim and the honorable jurors. The family of the deceased Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir accuses these 3 defendants of participating in the kidnapping, rape, and murder of their daughter. Suspect number 3, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, is accused of kidnapping, raping, and murdering their late daughter. Defendant number 1, Mr. Haroon Hassan Haroun, is accused by the family of being the person hired by Mr. Osman Al-Taib to starve, tie with ropes and chains, and beat the deceased girl to death. Suspect number 1, Mr. Haroun, confessed his crime to the police authority when they questioned him. Suspect number 2, the nurse, Miss Zakia Karamala, was hired by Mr. Osman Al-Taib to treat his late 4th wife, Firdos. She is charged with second-degree murder due to her involvement with the 2 primary suspects. Although she was supposed to know as a nurse that starving and beating the bride Firdos could cause her a serious illness that could eventually lead to her death. However, she kept it a secret and did not do what she had to do because her profession required her to work as a medical nurse. During her interrogation, Miss Zakia admitted her mistake. When the police interrogated Mr. Osman Al-Taib, he denied all the written charges against him. He told the police that the dead girl was his 4th wife. She wanted to leave him without divorcing her and run away with her lover, Mr. Salah. The husband, Osman Al-Taib, filed a complaint in the Sharia court in Al-Gadaref city against his unfaithful wife and her secret lover. The judge of the Sharia court issued a verdict of obedience to the recalcitrant bride. Accordingly, the police arrested her and took her to her legal husband, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, at the Hilton International Hotel in Khartoum City. During the honeymoon, the bride acted violently in the hotel room and tried twice to kill him on the assumption that he wasn't her groom. She grabbed his throat and was about to strangle him to death, but he was saved by his bodyguard, Mr. Haroun. The guard hit the violent wife on the head with a stick until she lost consciousness. The second time, the 4th wife bit her lawful husband's lips and refused to let him go. It was a painful sting and probably would have killed him if his bodyguard Haroun had not saved him again. He freed his lips from her sharp teeth by hitting her with a big rod on the head. Mr. Osman Al-Taib told the police authority that as a result of her violent behavior, he was forced to tie her with ropes for his own safety. He denied that he had starved her and beat her to death. He said that the disobedient wife herself refused to eat any food that was brought to her. In other words, the late wife Firdos went on hunger strike for several days, which eventually led to her untimely death. For this reason, Saeed Osman Al-Taib claimed that his 4th wife, Firdos, had committed suicide. The medical report confirmed the deliberate starvation and physical beating of the deceased wife. The medical report revealed that the wife had been subjected to forced sexual intercourse against her consent. The large cut scars and bruises on her body showed that she had been bound hand and foot for several days. When the doctors examined the genitals of the wife's body, such as the vagina, breasts, and buttocks, they found that there were severe damages in her sexual organs, which led them to conclude that the wife had been subjected to brutal and repeated rape by her husband. In addition, there were many scars on the wife's face and her entire body, which revealed the violent struggle that took place between her and the husband, Osman al-Taib, while he was trying to have sex with her against her desire. 4 of her teeth were broken. The medical report also revealed that the wife had become pregnant with a fetus of a few days old. Doctors estimated the age of the deceased wife between 14 and 16 years. Her family provided her birth certificate, which showed that she was 15 years old when she was raped and murdered by Saad Osman al-Taib. As soon as the courtman finished reading the indictment, the judge called the 3 suspects' lawyer to present his defense. Attorney Faisal got to his feet and walked slowly towards the judge and the jury. When he reached them, he first looked at the 3 suspects and the audience. There is a big smile on his face. He holds some papers in his hands. His face reveals his advanced age and long experience. Even the judge seems to know him and care about him a lot. He turned his face towards the judge and began to speak in a deep and solemn voice. His words came out of his mouth one after another. Sometimes he utters a single sentence and then looks first at the judge, the suspects, and finally the audience. Then he smiles, then laughs. Laughter dies and a serious look takes its place. Honorable Judge. Honorable Jury. Ladies and gentlemen, if the defendant, Mr. Osman al-Taib, the famous business tycoon in Gadaref City, is accused of kidnapping and raping his late legitimate Muslim wife, Mrs. Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, then this trial should be postponed. First, the judge of the Sharia court and 5 policemen from Gadaref City should be invited to come here and defend themselves against the same charges. These gentlemen are also involved in the so-called crime of abduction and rape of the 4th lawful wife of my client. The lawyer spoke these words with the confidence of the defender who knew in advance that he would win the case. Big smile, burst of laughter, and serious look again. Here I have in my hands a legal and legitimate Islamic marriage contract between Mr. Osman al-Taib and Mrs. Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. The marriage contract was concluded by His Eminence, the Blessed Imam Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, the Imam of the largest mosque in the city of Gadaref, and the elder brother of the deceased wife, Mr. Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, was the legal guardian of his sister because their father died 10 years ago. For this reason, the Gadaref Sharia court accepted the validity of the marriage and issued a ruling of obedience to the disobedient wife when she refused to join her legal husband. Imam Sheikh Marzouk is here, and he can testify to the truth of what I said if the court wanted him to do so. Attorney Faisal waited for some time. When the judge waved his hand indicating that he could move on, he resumed his line of defense. The marriage contract showed the names, addresses, and signatures of the 3 witnesses. The marriage contract also includes the name, address, and signature of the wife's older brother who was her guardian. As a lawyer and jurist, I found no reason to doubt the legality of the marriage contract. It is astonishing to know that the family of the late girl Firdos accuses the man to whom they gave their daughter as wife in a halal Islamic marriage of kidnapping and raping her. I tried to find out from both parties whether the wife had been divorced by her husband, but neither of them confirmed that. So, on what basis does the wife's family accuse their son-in-law of kidnapping and rape? When lawyer Faisal asked the above question, he raised his shoulders and hands in disapproval. Then he smiled and laughed. The legal representative continues to say I may or may not to be right. Or I could be wrong. Or whatever the judge and his jury come up with. Here in my hands, I have some tangible evidence presented by my client, the widowed husband, that his late 4th wife was cheating on him. She was having a secret love affair with a man named Salah Ahmed Hassan Salah. This is the same man who is acting as her attorney today in this court and is trying to challenge my defense. These are disgraceful photos showing the late wife embracing and kissing her secret lover in public in the city. When lawyer Faisal said these words, he removed some of the photos from his red file and handed them over to the judge. The judge looked at them and then passed them to his jurors. Every single one of them looked at those supposedly disgraceful photos. Thereafter, His Holiness collected the photographs of the lover Sulla and his late girlfriend Firdas and returned them to the advocate. Sir, Lawyer Faisal says to Attorney Sulla sarcastically, "Are you also interested in taking a look at these shameful pictures, or do you already know about them?" Defender Sulla remained silent, but his face showed anger. Then the cunning lawyer burst out laughing and said slyly, "Of course, you know about them because they make you anxious. I admit it's a stupid question I shouldn't have asked." Then he turned his face to the judge and jury and continued to speak with great confidence. When the defendant, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, learned about the secret love affair between his fourth wife and the lawyer, Mr. Sulla, he asked her mother, Sarah, and her older sister, Ms. Farida Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, to allow him to have his rebellious wife. This big sister Farida claimed to be the sole guardian of her two young sisters, Intisar and Firdaus. So, she thought that she was the only female guardian who could give her sisters in marriage to any two men she liked. We know that Islamic law does not recognize a woman as guardian over another woman, even if she is her mother or older sister. Accordingly, her claim is baseless and has no weight in any court of law in Sudan. Miss Frida refused to give her sister Firdaus to her legal husband and threatened to kill him if he dared to approach his legal wife. For this reason, Mr. Osman Al-Taib submitted a judicial complaint to the Sharia court. The judge of the Sharia court in Gadaref city considered the matter and issued a verdict of obedience against the disobedient Muslim wife Firdas. Al-Gadaref city police arrested the rebellious wife at her home and took her to her legal husband at the Hilton Hotel in the city. So far, I do not see any violation of the law on the basis of which my client could be accused of kidnapping his fourth Muslim wife. This is a copy of the obedience ruling issued by His Eminence, Maulana Abdul Mohsen Taha, judge of the Sharia court in Gadaref city. And here is the police order issued by the Honorable Islamic Court authorizing the police officers to take the disobedient wife to her husband, Sayyid Osman Al-Taib. Then the lawyer, Faisal, handed over those official documents to the judge to have a look at them. Judge Sami Hashim and the jury took a quick look at the official papers and returned them to the lawyer. Now I have to prove to the court that my client is innocent like a wolf, innocent of the blood of our prophet Joseph, of rape and murder charges. When he said that, the sly lawyer burst into ghastly, hysterical laughter like a scary villain in a horror movie. As stated in the indictment which was read to us in this esteemed courtroom today, the rebellious wife acted violently. Very violently. Now, what is the thing that the Holy Quran taught us to do for such a disobedient Muslim wife who became rebellious and dangerous? In Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 34, God Almighty gives husbands the right to beat their disobedient wives. This same noble verse allows fathers to discipline their daughters. How do we punish our bad women? We beat them for their own good. Therefore, the good husband, Osman, at that time or today, cannot be blamed for shackling and beating his disobedient Muslim wife Firdas. The indictment also states that the rebellious wife twice tried to kill her husband. She also denied him an important right in marital relations. In all religions, customs, and norms of peoples all over the world, no wife is expected to refuse her husband when he wants to have sex with her. Therefore, Mr. Osman Al-Taib had the absolute right to have sex with his legal Muslim fourth wife, whether she agreed or refused. This is a divine right granted by God Almighty in Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 3 and verse 34. There is no such thing called rape in the Islamic halal marriage if the husband married his Muslim wife according to the Holy Quran and the blessed Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. I am surprised to learn that the family interpreted that marital right as rape. Mr. Osman Al-Taib informed that he did not bind his fourth Muzeld, wife Firdas, because he wanted to have sex with her, but because she wanted to kill him. His bodyguard, Harun, and his private nurse, Zakiya, confessed during their interrogations that the fourth wife of my defendant had been behaving violently all the time and had made 2 attempts to kill her Muslim husband. As a wealthy business tycoon well known and very famous all over Sudan, Mr. Osman Al-Taib kept Mr. Harun as his bodyguard. This is not only to protect him from his violent wife Firdas, but from every other human being who wanted to kill him, including his rebellious fourth wife, his 3 other wives, and their sons, daughters, and grandchildren. Naturally, when the rebellious fourth wife Firdaus acted violently and tried to kill him twice, his bodyguard came to his rescue. The guard, Harun, was receiving monthly financial salaries from the defendant for this purpose. As his bodyguard, he goes with him wherever he goes and sleeps wherever his boss sleeps. We all know this is a must job specification for any loyal bodyguard. Miss Sakia is the private nurse for the business magnate Mr. Osman Al-Taib. She told me when I visited her in prison that she had treated the throat and lips of Mr. Osman Al-Taib when his fourth wife tried to kill him. My wealthy client had spent several days during his honeymoon with his new bride, Firdaus, at the Hilton International Hotel in Khartoum City. During those days that are supposed to be happy between the newly married couple, there were several sexual relations between the Muslim groom, Osman Al-Taib, with his legal bride, Firdaus. Of course, the rebellious and unfaithful wife always resisted him, and he had to forcibly fuck her pussy by his dick and makes her pregnant with his baby whether she liked it or not. I hope the court will excuse me for using plain words in referring to the act of sexual intercourse between a groom and his bride. If this can be interpreted as rape, then the panel of this court points the accusing finger at the verse of the Holy Quran that I referred to before. In frank words, the court says to God Almighty that you are unjust because you gave this right to the Muslim man over his disobedient wife, or his rebellious daughter, or his immoral sister. This noble verse of the Holy Quran commands the beating of the Nashis wife, the disobedient and rebellious woman who refuses her husband to have sex with her naked body through his phallus and fuck her vagina any time of the day and at any sex style. Her man wishes to do it even if he wants to have anal sex with her, she has no right to refuse him. Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 223 allows the husband to choose the sex style he wants, and if he wants to sodomy his wife, she cannot stop him from fucking her by his phallus in the ass. Based on what I have said and showed you, the defendant is not guilty of rape and murder. Shortly after that, while spending their honeymoon at the hotel, Mr. Osman Al-Taib was summoned by his secretary to Al-Gadaref city to do some urgent business. Before leaving, he transferred his new bride, Firdaus, to a rented house in the opulent Amarat locality and headed to his native town. He left her in the care of his bodyguard, Mr. Harun. Mr. Osman Al-Taib promised his fourth wife Firdaus and bodyguard to return after 2 days. He took his private nurse, Miss Sakia, with him. He needed her to be with him all the time and treat him for the disease of his lips caused by the bite of his rebellious and dangerous bride Firdaus. According to Nurse Sakia, Mr. Osman Al-Taib was unable to speak with his mouth for several days, and the reason for that, as I mentioned before, was the swelling of his lips as a result of the fatal sting through the sharp teeth of the disobedient fourth wife. She became like a mad dog and bit her lawful husband. His private doctor advised him to stop talking and chewing food for several days until his patient's lips healed. Unfortunately, when my client reached his city, he was accused of bribery and detained. Some days in prison, he could not return, and he did not call his wife, Firdaus, and his guard, Harun. Of course, my client cannot be held guilty of being late or of failing to communicate with his fourth wife and servant. He was arrested and beaten by Gadaref police during his interrogation. I have here an official medical report stating that my client remained in a comatose state in the ICU for several days. The report also stated that the defendant was severely beaten by some gang members inside the prison and his body trampled with stampede during violent riots and fighting between prisoners and guards. Because of this violence, my client became lame for life. Mr. Osman Al-Taib remained in a prolonged coma in the intensive care unit of the civil hospital for more than a week in the city of Gadaref. During those days, the health condition of the fourth wife, Firdaus, in Khartoum City was deteriorating day after day because of her hunger strike. The guard, Harun, was supposed to inform the hospital or take her to the nearby medical clinic, but unfortunately he did not. The nurse, Miss Sakia, returned 2 days later and visited the fourth wife of her imprisoned employer. When she saw her serious condition, she encouraged Mr. Haroun to take her to the hospital. Unfortunately, it was too late because my client's fourth wife breathed her last and died a few days later in the General Hospital of Khartoum City. If my client had been present, he would not have kept his sick wife in his rented house. He was definitely going to take her to the hospital. One last thing I have to mention about my client. He is a kind-hearted man, a good Muslim, and known for his goodness and generosity in his city. He built the largest mosque in the city of Al-Gadarif, the high school for girls, and the women's ward in the civil hospital in the same city. Such a kind and righteous man with such a big heart would never kill anyone. Therefore, Mr. Osman Al-Taib is innocent and cannot be held responsible for the death of his fourth wife, Firdos. The wife died because of her hunger strike and the carelessness of the guard, Haroun. Dear Honorable Judge and Jurymen, this is the whole matter before you. As I proved to all of you, Mr. Osman Al-Taib was not guilty of murder. His fourth wife, Firdos, had herself committed suicide. The charges of kidnapping and rape are also baseless. Accordingly, I ask this esteemed court to acquit my client, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, of these false charges. Thank you, Your Honor, Judge Sami Hashim, the honorable jurors, and all the ladies and gentlemen present here. And I ask God Almighty to have mercy on the soul of the late wife Mrs. Firdos, and to dwell her in a spacious palace in paradise, and to give patience to her honorable husband, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, and her family members, and may God prolong their lives. Amen, O Lord of the 7 heavens and 8 earths. Chapter 69. The Criminal Court of Khartoum ruling on the Islamic marriage and the kidnapping and killing of the second innocent girl. After defense lawyer Faisal finished his defense, he sat on his chair and the second lawyer was asked to come forward and present his arguments. Sulla got to his feet and walked slowly towards the center. From his steps the court and the public deduced that he was tense and anxious. When he started to speak, he was speaking in a stuttering voice. He began to utter his words in a loud voice. After some time the stuttering faded from him. As he speaks, he confronts the judge and jury. His Highness Judge Sami Hashim and the honorable jurymen. Attorney Faisal Farouk told the esteemed court the case from its end, making it seem as if there was no crime of kidnapping, rape, and murder as it is in reality. That is why I want to show you the tragedy of the late victim Firdos from its inception. Then the court can well understand the roots of the problem between Mr. Osman Al-Taib and his alleged fourth Muslim wife, the late teenage girl Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. First of all, she was 15 years old when she was kidnapped, raped, and murdered by the 71-year-old man. This problem caused a lot of troubles for Firdos and her family members. She was not the only victim of this tragedy, but her late brother Osman and her sister Intisar fell victim to the selfish motives of the accused, Mr. Osman Al-Taib. The problem began when his son, Sami, fell in love with Firdos's sister, Intisar. The son approached his father and asked him for permission to marry his girlfriend. The father was strongly against friendship because the girl is from a poor family and his son is from a rich family. The father was determined to marry his son, Sami, to the daughter of Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, the imam of the largest mosque in the city of Gadarif. He even proposed and made the engagement of his son with the daughter of the imam without his consent. The fiancée's name is Samia. Sami refused to accept his father's choice and told him that he could only marry his girlfriend, Intisar. The controlling father said to his son, "I will not allow you to marry a poor girl." "Objection, Your Honor," lawyer Faisal shouted, and before he got permission to voice his objection he said, "Lawyer Mr. Sulla does not have the right to disclose the dispute of the defendant's family members in court." "Your objection is rejected," the judge shouted. In any case, lawyer Sulla resumes, the father of Intisar, the late Mr. Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, when he was alive married 2 women. From his first wife, Sakina, he had a son, Omar, and a daughter, Badraya. Farida, Osman, Intisar, and Firdaus are the children of his second wife Sarah. Omar is the eldest son of the late Ibrahim, who is 26 years old, and Farida is the eldest daughter, who is 25 years old. They both think they are the guardians of their younger sisters. Because Farida is a woman, the Islamic Sharia law gave this right to her older half-brother Omar because he is a man. Omar is a notorious criminal and a member of a vicious gang in the city of Gadaref. Whereas Frida is a university graduate and is currently working as a translator in a large foreign company in Abu Dhabi. Therefore, Imam Maulana Sheikh Marzouk took advantage of that loophole in the Islamic Sharia law, which gives the woman's guardianship in marriage to the man only. And he cunningly used the criminal brother Umar and, as a mazun, gave the two sisters Intisar and Firdas in sham marriages to Hassan Majub al-Halali and Syed Osman al-Tayyib without their knowledge, presence, and consent. Secondly, before those evil deeds, there was always hatred and quarrels between the two wives of the late Mr. Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir because of polygamy. When the first wife, her son Omar, and her daughter Badriya learned of the love affair between Intisar, the poor girl, and Sami, the son of the rich man, Syed Osman al-Tayyib, they tried by all means to spoil the friendship. The mother and daughter went to an evil witch doctor named Hajj Muhammad. That evil magician promised to spoil the love relationship between Intisar and Sami through his servants or demons, whom he claimed to possess and could use to harm people. I have a strong objection, lawyer Faisal shouted again. What is the objection? The judge inquires. First of all, lawyer Sulla must tell the court where he got this confidential family information from. Second, he must tell us what this has to do with the present trial. Accepting the first objection and rejecting the second objection, says the judge. The information was provided to me by Miss Badriya, the daughter of the first wife of the late Mr. Ibrahim. She is here in court and ready to bear witness to what I have said. If Miss Badriya was present here, would she stand up and confirm what Attorney Sulla said about her? The half-sister of the late wife Firdas rose to her feet and confirmed under oath what Sulla had said. Then the judge asked her to return to her seat. As I said, Sulla continued, the witch doctor Hajj Muhammad promised Badriya and her mother, Sakina, that he would cut off, by creating obstacles, the emotional relationship between Intisar and Sami. When the daughter and her mother left his home, another visitor named Hassan Majub al-Halali approached him for the same matter, but with a different motive. He asked the magician Hajj Muhammad to spoil the friendship between the two lovers because he is madly in love with Intisar. But it is a selfish, one-sided love. Hassan here, and if he is an honest man, then he should confess his selfish love, which is only one-sided for the girl Intisar. When he proposed to her for marriage, she told him that she did not love him and did not want to marry him. Intisar, as I said, she has true love for her boyfriend, Sami. Both are deeply in love with each other and are engaged and want to be together as husband and wife. I object, yelled the suspect's lawyer again. I want to know how lawyer Sulla learned about Hassan's visit to the magician, Hajj Muhammad. I learned of his visit through the sorcerer Hajj Muhammad himself. The judge says, would you explain yourself better to the court? I obtained this information through Hajj Muhammad's confession. As a result, he was arrested for rape and public deceit. He is currently in pretrial detention in Al-Gadaref prison. This is a transcript of his recorded confession. Attorney Sulla then handed the tape to Judge Sami Hashim and continued speaking. This is the tape on which elder sister Frida tricked the vile witch doctor into discovering that he was the mastermind of the two marriages' evil plots. Can the court know where you got this classified material from? I got it through Intisar's older sister Frida. She visited his home and secretly recorded his confession. Hajj Muhammad did not know that she was the sister of the two girls, Intisar and Firdaus, so he told her everything. She used a small detective tape and recorded his sinister plots in full. He admitted that he was the mastermind of the two false marriages. Hassan's father and Mr. Osman al-Tayyib are among the dearest friends of Hajj Muhammad. To these three evil friends we can add Imam Maulana Sheikh Marzouk as the fourth evil friend. When Hajj Muhammad learned that his visitor was the son of his friend, Mr. Majub al-Halali, he went to his father. He expected that Mr. Osman al-Tayyib would be interested in severing the relationship between his rich son and the poor girl. From him he learned that his son, Sami, had already challenged his authority. and Mr. Osman Al-Taib promised to pay any amount of money to Hajj Muhammad if he could break off the friendship between his rich son and the poor girl. Moreover, Hajj Muhammad learned that Syed Usman Al-Taib and Maulana Sheikh Marzik were interested in marrying the son Sami and the daughter Samia. To sum up the long story, the evil wizard Hajj Muhammad introduced these 4 friends to the half-brother of the 2 sisters. Their brother Omar, as I mentioned, really hates his sisters and is waiting for any opportunity to spoil their lives. So, he agreed to their marriage without their consent. Hajj Muhammad received bribes from Hassan's father, Sami's father, and the evil half-brother. Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, as the elder brother of Intisar and Firdaus, acted as their legal guardian. The Imam of the Grand Mosque, Sheikh Marzouk, conducted the 2 marriages in the office of Mr. Osman Al-Taib. Maulana did not try to find out whether the girls had another brother or not. Omar told him that their father died 10 years ago. The 3 witnesses to these 2 false marriages are Al-Hajj Muhammad, Fatah Karar, and Majub Al-Hilali. The so-called halal Islamic marriages were not held in the mosque as they falsely claimed, but in the office of Mr. Osman Al-Taib. If we were to accept these 2 evil schemes as lawful marriages, there would be no difference between us and the people of the forest. Only the law of the jungle can justify such sinister plots as legitimate marriages. These 2 invalid marriages should be considered by this criminal court as serious crimes committed against 2 innocent sisters. All the people mentioned by me have selfish interests behind such sham marriages. None of them considered the interests of the 2 innocent sisters. They sold and bought every sister as if she was a slave girl. Finally, I would like to admit one fact. Yes, I was in love with the late girl Firdaus when these 2 evil plots were committed against her and her sister Intisar. She and I began our love before the selfish and lustful old man, Osman Al-Taib, bought her as his slave girl rather than his 4th Muslim wife from her evil half-brother Omar. Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir is a notorious criminal who is currently serving a 16-year prison sentence in Gadaref Central Prison. He was tried and convicted for his involvement in the crime of kidnapping and raping another innocent girl by the name of Mona Sulla Eldin Hashim. Gangster Omar and his 5 gang members had kidnapped her while she was returning from school and took her to a brothel and brutally raped her there. This girl, the innocent victim of the first crime of kidnapping and rape, is now my legal wife and sits here in this esteemed courtroom. She is ready and willing to corroborate every word I said about convicted prisoner Omar and the heinous crime he and the 5 other gang members committed against her. When the judge did not ask the first innocent girl, Mona, to come forward and confirm the words of her husband, lawyer Sulla resumed. Moreover, Mr. Osman Al-Taib added to his first heinous act another heinous crime, which is the kidnapping, rape, and brutal killing of the second innocent girl, Firdaus. The medical report confirmed the imprisonment, rape, beating, starvation, and killing of the late girl Firdaus at the hands of her so-called legal Muslim husband, Osman Al-Taib. In addition to that, here is this sad emotional letter that my ex-girlfriend Firdaus wrote to me during her final suffering and dying in Khartoum General Hospital. The excruciating letter described in detail how her hands and feet were tied with ropes and chains, starved, raped, beaten, and brutally murdered by her alleged legal Muslim husband, Osman Al-Taib, and the second accused, Gard Haroun. Based on the strong and tangible evidence that I presented today, these 3 suspects, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, Mr. Haroun Hassan Haroun, and Ms. Zakia Karamella, deserve severe penalties for their horrific crimes against the late, innocent girl Firdaus. At the very least, these 2 guilty men, Osman and Haroun, should receive the death penalty and be sent to the gallows and hanged to death. When the lawyer, Sulla, finished narrating the 2 evil plots, he handed to the judge the first love letter he had received from his late beloved girlfriend, Firdaus. Then he bowed his head to the judge and his jurymen as respect and appreciation. That done, he returned to his seat and sat next to his beautiful bride, Mona, the first victim of a vicious kidnapping and brutal rape. Then the judge said, "Does the defense lawyer Faisal have anything to say or add?" "Yes, honorable judge and jury, I have to rebuttal what attorney Sulla said." The lawyer is wrong, and I will tell you why I think that. I simply think he is new in the criminal case system in the courts of law. In short, what Mr. Sulla presented has nothing to do with our current case. It was not necessary to expose the private affairs of other people unrelated to the case in question. For example, what does this court have to do with the quarrels of the two competing rival wives of the late Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, the father of the late wife Firdos, or the private disputes between my client, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, with his son Sami? Or should we close our minds and believe the superstitious belief that the black magic power of the so-called witch doctor Hajj Muhammad can separate lovers and spoil relations between husbands and wives? I would like Attorney Sulla to tell us about his opinion on black magic. Sulla says out loud, and I do not believe that the magician Hajj Muhammad has any demonic power, as he claimed to his visitors that he could, through his devilish servants, separate lovers or harm husbands and wives. Having said that, I strongly believe that the kidnapping, rape, and murder of the second innocent girl, Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, was not committed by these three suspects only, but by many other people such as the Sharia court judges, policemen, the Imam of the Grand Mosque, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, the famous politician Majub al-Hilali, and al-Faqih, or the witch doctor, Hajj Muhammad. Unfortunately, those people are all known and respected people in our Islamic community in Gaddaraf city. Hajj Muhammad was the mastermind of the two evil plots, and these three suspects and other men of the society mentioned by me are the hands that carried out the heinous crime against the innocent underage girl, the late Firdos, who was butchered horrifically by her so-called lawful Muslim husband Osman Al-Taib and his servant Harun Hassan Harun. Lawyer Sulla could not complete his defense when he remembered and imagined the horror of the crime of kidnapping, rape, and the brutal murder of his late beloved Firdos. So, he stopped speaking and wiped away the stream of tears from his weeping eyes. Then he returned to his chair and sat near his bride, Mona. Judge Sami Hashim said that the court is now opening the door for lawyers to cross-examining the three suspects. When defense lawyer Faisal did not respond to the judge's call, lawyer Sulla rose to his feet again and asked for permission to speak to nurse Zakia Karamalla. When he got the judge's approval, he went to the suspected nurse and began questioning her. You have been appointed, Miss Zakia, as stated in the indictment, by Mr. Osman Al-Taib as his private nurse. Did he tell you it was your job to take care of his health or that of his fourth wife? The health of his new bride, Firdos, says Zakia. Did he tell you what's wrong with his new bride's health problem? Yes, sir. He told me that his new bride is a disobedient, rebellious wife and a violent girl who sometimes attacks him and other times hurts herself. You mean to say he told you that he hired you as a private nurse to treat his violent wife and himself when she physically attacks and hurts him and herself? Yes, sir. When did he tell you that? Before the police brought him the allegedly rebellious wife, or after she was brought to him? Before the dangerous fourth wife comes to the hotel. This means that Mr. Osman Al-Taib expected his fourth wife to behave violently before the police brought her to him at the hotel. Yes, I think he expected that violent behavior from her. Did he tell you why she is going to act violently? No, sir. Did you at least guess the reason for her violence after the 5 policemen brought her to him from Gaddaraf to Khartoum? Absolutely not, sir. Well, you're a girl, Miss Zakia, and you must know that when a 15-year-old teenage girl, like the late Firdos, was forced to marry an old man of 70 years, who is older than her grandfather in age, she would naturally rebel against him and reject him as a husband. I didn't think of that, sir. Have you ever read the famous book Season of Migration to the North by Al-Taib Salih? In that book, the widow acts violently and kills her new husband, the old man, on their first wedding night. She did this because she was given by her male relatives to marry him without her consent. Therefore, her case is the same as that of the 15-year-old teenage girl Firdos and the 71-year-old old man, Mr. Osman Al-Taib. Anyone who reads this great classic novel will agree with the widow's right to defend her honor and her body against her supposedly lawful Muslim husband. Every woman in the world must defend herself against her rapist, and the law allows her to attempt to kill him in self-defense. I have not read such a novel, sir, but I agree with you that a woman will defend herself against her rapist. But Al-Sayed Osman al-Tayyib was the legal Muslim husband of his fourth wife, Firdaus. He married her legally according to the Holy Quran and the blessed Sunnah of the Prophet. He even showed me his marriage certificate with his fourth lawful Muslim wife, Firdaus Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. So, how do you call his halal marital and sexual relationship with his fourth Muslim wife, Firdaus, kidnapping and rape? Well, it also appears that you, Miss Sakia, has been compelled to believe by the argument of the legal representative of Mr. Osman al-Tayyib that the fictitious marriage between him and his late innocent victim Firdaus was a legitimate marriage. As for me, I do not see it as anything other than a sinister plot concocted by evil men and carried out against an innocent minor girl who is not more than 15 years old and therefore younger than the granddaughter of her alleged Muslim husband when he kidnapped her and raped her to death. The nurse remained silent and did not comment on Attorney Sullah's last strong words of condemnation above. Well, Miss Sakia, at least you know that our Sudanese ancestors acted very violently when the Arab invaders came to enslave them in the name of religion. They have been fighting against them for a long period of time. They did the same against the Turkish invaders and the British colonialists. Objection. The lawyer, Mr. Faisal, shouted, "The analogy is wrong," and the lawyer, Sullah, puts misleading examples in the mind of the suspect, Miss Sakia. The objection was overturned and rejected, says the main judge. Nurse Sakia continues, Lawyer Sullah, as you just said, Mr. Osman al-Tayyib told you that his wife is self-harming. Did he tell you why she grabbed his throat and choked him and then bit his lips? No, sir. Well, you probably guessed why she was trying to kill him. At that time, I had not guessed such a thing. Not at all, sir. Anyway, if your job as a nurse is to take care of his violent wife, why were you taken with him to Gadaref City? I can't answer your question because that has nothing to do with this case. Why not? I think I can help you answer this question. He changed your duty from dealing with his violent wife to being his private secretary. And that new job got you in trouble with the Gadaref police. The verdict of obedience of the Sharia court against the disobedient Muslim wife. It is a love story written in English and translated into Arabic. By Dr. A. Ahmed. Nurse Sakia started crying. Lawyer Sulla went to her and put his hand on her shoulder to encourage her. Listen, Miss Sakia, while I was studying the details of this case, I discovered that you are a kind nurse. You are the one who asked Mr. Osman al-Tayyib to stop beating and torturing his new bride Firdaus. It was you, too, who persuaded his servant Haroun to take the sick and dying bride to the hospital. That's why I want you to be honest and tell the court the truth. Is it true that the late victim, Firdaus, went on hunger strike, or was Mr. Osman al-Tayyib the one who refused to give her food and water? It was her husband who ordered Mr. Haroun to give her food and water only once a day, and it should be a small quantity. How did you know that? Mr. Haroun told me about it. Have you guessed the reason for this inhumane treatment? Was it because he wanted to starve her to death, or for some other reason? Mr. Haroun told me that Mr. Osman al-Tayyib wants to weaken her physical strength so that he can have sex with her. He tried to do this sex to her several times, but each time she prevented him from doing so and tried to kill him. Objection, objection, Lawyer Faisal shouted angrily. What is the reason for your objection? The judge replies. I strongly object and refuse such kind of talk to continue in court. This is a completely private and confidential family relationship between husband and wife, and we have no right to hear it in court. As I mentioned before, Mr. Osman al-Tayyib bound his violent and rebellious wife because she made 2 attempts to kill him. Even the police will tie hands and feet and beat anyone who is violent. Sometimes they would kill him if he became a threat to their life. Do you expect my client to allow his violent and rebellious bride to move freely until she kills him? We Muslim men punish our violent wives, dissolute daughters, rebellious sisters, and if that is not enough, we tie them with ropes and flog them with whips and sticks. Even teachers in schools severely beat their bad and rebellious students. Likewise, our blessed Prophet Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, said in one of his authentic hadiths, a man should not be asked why he beats the members of his household. Among the members of his household are his wife or wives, daughters, sisters, and any other female relatives. As I said before, this is a divine right of the father, husband, and brother granted by the Holy Quran in Surat Al-Nisa 4, verse 34, and also authorized by our infallible Prophet Muhammad in the authentic hadith that I quoted just now. In fact, this disciplinary right granted to the man over the nashis or disobedient woman is not subject to discussion, objection, or criticism. We are not in the countries of infidel Europeans, atheists, feminists, Christians, American infidels, Hindu polytheists, pagan Buddhists, cursed Canadians and Australians, or Jewish Satanists who are brothers of apes and pigs. We are in a Muslim country called Sudan. Did I make myself clear, or does the court still want more Islamic religious clarification or quoting more from the verses of the Holy Quran and hadiths of the blessed Sunnah of the infallible Prophet of God Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace? Your objection is accepted, says the judge calmly and cautiously, as if he was afraid that lawyer Faisal might accuse him of blasphemy or apostasy from Islam. Whatever it is, Lawyer Sulla resumes his pleading impatiently, Miss Sakia. The medical report showed that the hands and feet of the victim, Firdos, were bound all the time. So how can you say today that her alleged husband, the old man Osman Al-Taib, starved her because he wanted to weaken her physically so that he could have sex with her? At first he tried to have sex with her without tying her up, but she caught his throat, strangled him, and was about to kill him. His guard Aaron came and saved him from her hands. How did Mr. Haroon save Mr. Osman Al-Taib? He hit Firdaus, the new bride, on the head with a stick and made her pass out. How did you know that it was the guard, Haroon, who hit her with his stick on the head, and not Mr. Osman Al-Taib himself? Because Mr. Haroon came to me and told me that the new bride had killed her husband by strangling him to death. When I got to their hotel room, I found both of them unconscious. I first treated Mr. Osman Al-Taib. When he regained consciousness, he ordered Haroon, his guard, to tie his new bride with ropes to the bed before she regained consciousness. Can you describe to the court the situation in which Haroon tied Firdaus? He spread her legs apart and tied them at the corners of the bed. Then he put her hands behind her back and tied them together. He used strong ropes and a long chain to tie them up. When he bound her, did he remove her clothes? He did so before tying her legs and hands. She was unconscious when he undressed her completely and then tied her up. Did her so-called husband order him to take off her clothes, including her underwear, or did he do it himself? Of course, Syed Osman Al-Taib ordered him to do so. I was in the room when the former ordered the latter to undress and tie up his new bride. Please continue. After she was stripped naked and tied securely, Mr. Osman Al-Taib asked me to treat her. When she regained consciousness, he ordered me to leave the room. What about his bodyguard Aaron? Did he leave with you or did he stay? He didn't leave with me. The old man told him to hide under the big bed and come out to save him if his violent bride tried to kill him again. Did she try to kill him again? Yes, she did it for the second time. She bit his lips. When the servant Haroon called me again and I went into the room, I found his master's lips bleeding profusely. Both the bride and groom were unconscious and had a lot of blood in their mouths. What happened after you revived them? I told the groom, Osman Al-Taib, not to attempt sex with his new bride, Firdaus, because she was too tired and weak. Her husband accepted my advice and let his fourth wife sleep in the bed, and he left the hotel. He returned to her after a few days. During those days, he ordered Haroun not to give his rebellious and dangerous bride too much food and water. Mr. Haroon told me that when the old man Mr. Osman returned again, his hungry bride begged him to give her a few drops of water and some food, but he refused to give it to them. When the young bride became physically weak and almost unconscious, her groom had sex with her several times. Objection, Your Honor, the Honorable Judge and jury, shouted Attorney Faisal. What is your objection? The Khartoum police have interrogated Mr. Haroun. He did not mention in his confession that the husband, Saeed Osman Al-Taib, refused to give food and water to his fourth wife, Firdos, even though she begged him for that. Here is Mr. Haroun, and let him speak confirming or refuting his statements. When the judge questioned the guard, Haroun, he denied what Nurse Zakia said about him. Your Honor, Judge Sami Hashim, and the esteemed men of law, how can we believe such a virtuous and generous man who built a great mosque for God, a high school for girls, and a wing of a hospital for women in the city of Gadaref, can do such inhumane work to his legitimate Muslim fourth wife? The disobedient fourth wife, Firdaus, herself was responsible for her hunger and thirst, or for causing her suicidal death. She refused to eat or drink during her honeymoon because she was angry at her family's marriage to an old man. In addition, before and after her marriage, she loved lawyer Sulla and wanted to flee with him. The shameful and obscene sexual photos that were taken in public places between her and her lover Sulla, which my client presented to the court, showed that she was a disobedient wife, unfaithful to her legal husband, and was cheating on him with another man. But regarding her marriage to Mr. Osman Al-Taib, we cannot condemn an old man for marrying a young teenage girl. And if we condemn him, then we condemn our blessed Prophet Muhammad. May God bless him and grant him peace. Our infallible Prophet, the Chosen One, married his third wife, the child bride Aisha, when she was 6 years old, and had sex with her when she was 9 years old, and he was 54 years old. Therefore, it is the accepted sunnah of the Prophet for the elderly Muslim men to marry underage brides. Lawyer Sulla was frustrated by the arguments of defense lawyer Faisal because he referred to religion to justify every evil practice committed against the late 15-year-old victim Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. Thus, he correctly predicted that the judge and jury in the criminal court could not reject these legally and socially acceptable Islamic religious justifications because that would be interpreted as an attack on the Holy Quran and the marital life of the Prophet Muhammad. Thank you, Miss Zakia, for telling the truth. Your Honor, the judge, I am satisfied with the information provided to the court by the suspect, Nurse Zakia Karamalla. Then Lawyer Sulla wiped away his soaked tears with his handkerchief after questioning the witness and the accused, Zakia. Then the felony court judge announced an hour's recess. After the break, the judge and his jurymen entered the courtroom 15 minutes late. The delay is attributed to their long private discussion regarding the case. As soon as the judge took his seat, he handed some official papers to the courtman and asked him to read them out loud. After this court carefully studied the case at hand, it came up with the following decisions and rulings. And after listening carefully to the 3 accusations leveled by the family of the late wife, Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, against the 3 defendants, and after hearing the pleadings of the lawyers, Mr. Faisal and Mr. Sulla, and after hearing the interrogation of suspect number 2, the nurse, Ms. Zakia, Judge Sami Hashim and the jurors of this criminal court reached the following verdicts. Is suspect number 2, the paid private nurse, Zakia Karamalla, guilty of covering and assisting the defendants, Mr. Osman Al-Taib and Mr. Haroun Hassan Haroun, in causing the death of the 4th wife, Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, or not guilty? This court found her not guilty. Is accused number 1 Mr. Haroun Hassan Haroun guilty of killing Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir? This court found him guilty of 2nd-degree murder. That is why this court sentenced suspect number 1, Mr. Haroun Hassan Haroun, to 4 years in prison. Actually, the second murderer, Haroun, received a reduced sentence similar to that of singers and dancers in the Al-Washa's rape of the first innocent girl, Mona. He received a light punishment, as if a cock was singing at the evil old man's rape of the second innocent girl, Firdos, as she danced on her deathbed, slain in pain. Is suspect number 2, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, guilty of kidnapping his 4th legal wife, Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, from her family's house, or is he not guilty? This court found him not guilty. When the criminal court in Khartoum Bari acquitted the convict, Osman Al-Taib, of the kidnapping charge, Sila, Mona, Walid Hamza, Badriya, and her mother Sarah stood on their feet as a sign of protest. But the other people remained seated in their seats. Is Mr. Osman Al-Taib guilty of raping his fourth legal Muslim wife, Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, or is he not guilty? This court found him not guilty. When the criminal court also acquitted him of the second charge related to the rape of his alleged fourth legitimate Muslim wife, Firdos, the face of the evil old man, Osman Al-Taib, showed a big smile. The hypocritical Imam, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, also smiled happily. Attorney Sila, his three friends, and her mother, Sarah, are very disappointed by the injustice of the court. Is Mr. Osman Al-Taib guilty of killing his legal wife number 4, Firdos Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, or is he not guilty? This court also found him not guilty. Accordingly, this court acquitted suspect number 2 and accused number 3 of the charges brought against them. When the evil old man was acquitted of his heinous crimes, he rose to his feet and began clapping his hands for the so-called justice of the criminal court of Khartoum. The lawyer, Sila, fell to his knees, covered his face with his hands, and began crying for his beloved friend, the second innocent girl, the late underage Firdos. His new bride, the first innocent girl, Mona, the good citizen, Walid Hamza, and her half-sister, Badriya, wept too. While the grieving mother Sarah of the oppressed, raped, and brutally murdered daughter knelt on her knees on the ground and began to weep bitterly as well. In the meantime, the wicked Imam Maulana Sheikh Marzouk started shouting again and again, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Truth has come and falsehood has vanished, for falsehood was already crushed. He shouts as if he is in a mosque calling people to pray. The alleged husband Hassan Majub al-Hilali of the second fugitive disobedient wife, Intisar, Fada Karer, Tia, Yeager, Nisar, and the 5 new spies, the so-called black slaves, joined him in shouting takbir and applause to the evil religious leader, and began to repeat after him those satanic phrases of victory. On that day, the kidnapper, rapist, and murderer, Osman Satan Al-Taib, ordered his criminal, spiritual leader, Imam Maulana Satan Marzouk, to take the spies and criminals to a 5-star hotel and buy them dinner at his own expense. As a matter of fact, the wicked old man became very happy because he only had 1 week left in jail. Then he swears by God and the divorce of his 3 wives that as soon as he gets out of Kobar Central Prison, he will dig the ground or exhume the filthy, damned prostitute, Intisar, from her grave if she already died, and hand her body, whether alive or dead, to her legal husband, Hassan, to rape her fucking pussy and complete his permissible Islamic marriage with her. He decided to personally meet all his corrupt friends who are senior police officers in the police departments of Khartoum, Gadaref, Kassala, Wadi Madani, and Port Sudan cities and pay them whatever sums of money they ask for. Then he will ask them to find the runaway rebellious wife Intisar and hand her over to her lawful husband, Hassan. After renewing the oath of revenge, withering away, the Prince of Demons sent the 10 spies hired by him to search for the so-called second disobedient Muslim wife, the dirty, runaway whore who supposedly stole the heart of his son Sammy and sent him with his other wicked friends to prison. The evil old man always remembers over and over again, day and night when he was in Gadaref prison, how he was imprisoned with a notorious criminal called Coco, the son of the devil and his evil gang, get brutally beaten by the ruthless police interrogators and dangerous criminal bodyguards. He has appointed his evil Imam Maulana Sheikh Marzouk as the new leader and financier of the 9 spies and the alleged lawful Muslim husband of Intisar, Hassan Majub al-Hilali. The wicked old geezer in his impure heart and corrupt mind also decided that once he is released from prison he will arrange to kill Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. He decided to hire a paid killer or order one of his drivers to hit her on the street with his speeding car and kill her horribly. But he hid that conspiracy buried in his evil entity from her so-called legitimate Muslim husband, Hassa, and his other partners in crime.